Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is NopNapNarp, and today it's finally time to review Batman: The Enemy Within as a complete package. With this being a Telltale title, the game was of course released episodically, and since I can't allow myself to experience a story, show, or game until it's fully consumable, I had to wait. You know what I mean? It just sucks watching a TV show live and then the season ends and it's boo-hoo to you, wait 6 more months for the new season. No, that's no good for me. But now this game is fully released, and thank God, because I've really been looking forward to this one. As with all my reviews, I will try to remain as objective as possible, but complete objectivity is of course impossible. On this channel, I find it to be important to disclose my biases towards a game before you hear the review, so let's start with that. I suggest you first watch this video here, in which I discuss some of my overall biases, just so you can get a better idea of where I'm coming from. The link to that video is in the description below. In terms of specifics to this game, it's important for me to disclaim that I love Batman. Oh my god, do I love everything Batman. And you know what? I'm the worst type of fan too. You know the type. The one who says he's the #1 Batman fan and has never read one single comic. Yeah, I'm that asshole. So, I'm already very heavily into Batman, plus I also really enjoyed Telltale's first Batman series, so my hype for this one was pretty high. Keep that in mind. Also, I like Telltale games. Sorry, but they generally have pretty good stories and also easy platinum trophies, which I always love. I think that gets the biases specific to this video game out of the way, so with that being said, here we go with my review of Batman: The Enemy Within. Batman: The Enemy Within is Telltale's newest completed series, as its final episode released on March 27, 2018. The Enemy Within is a follow-up to Telltale's 2016 Batman series, which I actually played a few months ago for free when it was available for PlayStation Plus members. I bought the game using the Season Pass and played the game in the span of about 5 days. Not sure why that's important, but I wrote it in the script and now I said it, and so we're just gonna roll with it. So, let's jump into the review. Okay, enough with the stupidity. Let's get into the meat of the review by starting with the presentation of this game. Visuals. So, like every other Telltale game, the team has implemented cel-shaded graphics as the primary art design, and I've never had a problem with this before, and I still don't. Telltale games often get accused of being too samey, and for good reason too, but this is one component that I don't really get too tired of because not a lot of the games that are being made anymore use this art style, at least the ones that I'm playing. I think the game looks great, and the cel shading really goes well with the comic book aesthetic associated with superheroes such as Batman. I didn't have any issues with lighting either, as I always thought the environments reflected a realistic amount of light while also making sure nothing was ever too dark. I particularly enjoyed this scene at Ace Chemicals, in which the glow of the chemicals below create a green tinge on all the characters. It especially blends well with Joker's getup. It's scenes like this that really sell the visual presentation, and overall, it's a solid job. The design team continues to get better at improving these cel-shaded graphics with each new outing. The game also ran pretty well, and I only ever encountered one game-breaking glitch, which was a bit annoying, but it only took me about 10 minutes to catch up to where I was, so it wasn't really too bad. As you can see, in this glitch, the scene keeps playing out, but the camera never moves. It just stays locked on to these 3 still figures. Yikes. But really, that was the only negative I noticed in terms of bugs and glitches. And since there weren't any besides this, I just went ahead and threw it into the visuals category, but now let's move on to sound and music. Now, I try to say this in each review, but I'm not really the guy that can speak well towards the quality of sound and music in a game. I do my best to key in on it, but I can't really use words like tune, melody, and, what else? Words like rhythm? Yeah, that's one, rhythm. I can't really use those words in any intelligent way, but I'll offer up what I think about what I heard. In terms of sound, I thought the team did a great job, especially in nailing how characters' voices would be affected by the environment they were speaking in. For example, in the bad guy's underground lair, you can pick up on a slight echo on each character's voice.
You're not in the pact. Not yet. Not till everyone votes. What do you say, boys? Bruce Wayne. In or out?
The aristocrat is not afraid to dirty his hands. I say we add him to the pact. In.
Wayne is as shallow as his reputation would lead you to believe. He would only drag us down. Out.
This comes from the fact that the space they are in is fairly open, but still contained and underground. It makes sense for their voice to have an echo, and the developers had the foresight to put that in. It's little things like this that help the game feel more immersive. The sound of nearby activities also helps sell the scene, such as the wind whipping around, but I felt like the game would have benefited from additional sounds and more of these environmental cues. I mean, this is Gotham City after all, but it's like no one's driving around at night. What kind of city does that? None. In terms of music, I didn't really notice too much of it, and what I did pick up on seemed to be background music or character themes. I did, however, always notice Joker's background music, and its uneasy sounds fit nicely with Joker's persona.
It hasn't been easy for me out here, you know? I'm the new guy now. It's the freedom that gets to you. There's so damn much you hardly know what to do with it. It's not like Arkham.
Overall, sound and music were serviceable, but clearly not a major focal point of the development cycle, which I don't really think it needed to be. Everything here was at least passable or better. In terms of voice acting, I'd say that overall, everyone does a solid job with their performances here. I found that each voice actor pretty much nailed the characters they were supposed to be representing. I'd say the standouts would have to be Joker, Amanda Waller, and Alfred, who I always felt did the best job on a roster of excellent performances overall.
Well, well, well. Sorry to interrupt. Not only are you aiding and abetting a wanted criminal, you corrupted one of my most loyal agents. Someone I trusted. Someone I took under my wing.
You don't deserve loyalty, Waller. From Iman or anyone else.
Joker especially nails it, with the overall uneasiness in his voice inflections alongside of the creepy laughs that often finished off a piece of dialogue.
This is where the wheeling and dealing happens. The power plays, the boardroom scuffles. I can feel all that toxic energy in the walls. You think I could run a place like this one day?
It was just a great performance, there's no doubt about it. On the other hand, there was one character who stuck out in my mind as not really nailing the performance, and that was Harley Quinn. Now, I guess I should of course say that I bring in an idea of what I think Harley Quinn should sound like based off of what I know about her character, but that aside, I just really didn't care for it too much. Whether she was going for tough or seductive, I always felt like Harley couldn't sell the tone she was going for. It was always somewhere in between.
Do I look funny to you? Like I'm some kind of punchline or something?
Excuse me?
You're gonna let your employees sass me like that? Is this the kind of operation you run here?
She was my only complaint in terms of voice acting, and I'm not going to say it was bad, it just wasn't for me. Maybe you feel the same, maybe you don't. Overall, the presentation of the game was good, just a few minor flaws, but nothing that took away from the overall enjoyment with the game. Gameplay. Well, this might possibly be the shortest gameplay section of a review ever, but I mean this is a Telltale game, so if you've played one, you know what to expect. You got your standard QTE sections, there's the bits where you move around a small environment and pick up clues, your conversational choices with other characters, and finally, the best gameplay mechanic of all time, sections where you get to push the left stick forward. Can you smell the innovation, people? So this game is a sequel, so let me briefly discuss how they've built, and I'm saying that word built with quotes, on the gameplay that already existed. Let's start with the QTE sections. These bits are one of the 3 staples of Telltale games, alongside dialogue branches and minor exploration sections, and the enemy within is no exception. The game still uses QTEs specifically in parts where Bruce Wayne or Batman is engaging in some sort of combat situation. In the original series, a lot of these QTEs were simple one-button prompts that build up to a finish move that involved a two-button prompts. In the enemy within, they still have those kind of QTEs, but they've also introduced new ways to present QTEs that are, at the very least, an attempt to change up this style of gameplay. There are scenarios where Bruce or Batman can choose between two options or more options on how to stop an enemy. For example, in this scene, you can have Batman throw a Batarang, call for Tiffany Fox's support, or use a shocker to take down Joker. It gives the player another way to express themselves and their perceptions of what Batman would do. Another example of this style of gameplay change is that there are a few scenarios where Batman must now hit 4-button prompts in a certain order to complete an objective. These are relatively simple to do and ultimately feel like a normal progression of the one-button prompts, but it's nothing too special. Moving on, we have the sections where you interact with objects in a small environment. It is here that I believe the developers have taken a step backwards instead of continuing to build more, especially considering the material available in the Batman IP they are working with. The previous series had these great sections where Batman would use his detective mode to recreate a crime scene, and while this mode is brought into the new series, it seems almost an afterthought. I say this because the game has less times when you engage with this detective mode. In fact, there is only one time that you ever have to link clues together, and it comes in the very first episode. In that one example, they even have you determine the order of the events that transpired. It felt like a neat little way to further the detective mode. Unfortunately, that's the only time they ever use it. Sure, there are other times in the game where you explore for clues, but never do you recreate a crime scene again, which I would argue is a big part of Batman's persona, and a strength of the original series. So like I mentioned, you'll still have sections where you find clues, but you never get to link them together in that cool way that only Batman can. Here, these sections have taken a backseat for a continuation of a character study of Bruce Wayne. And that brings me to dialogue options, which is the main pull of a Telltale game, as these options are what allow a player to express themselves and feel like they are affecting the narrative meaningfully, even if it doesn't change the story overall. Here, dialogue options aren't very different from the previous series or other Telltale games. You are often given a choice between 4 different options that offer the player a chance to respond how they feel the character should respond. 3 of these options are spoken, while the 4th is an option to stay silent. Overall, I felt like the dialogue options provided here were all-encompassing, and it allowed me to maintain a distinct attitude towards each of the other characters. For example, I wanted to treat the Joker as an ally for as long as I could, and the game always gave me plenty of dialogue options that assured that I could keep up with this perspective towards him. There are also, of course, decisions in the game that are more important than others, and the game will ask the player to choose one of 2 options that are supposed to carry some sort of emotional weight or baggage. However, outside of the final major option at the end of episode 5, I never really felt that these decisions put much pressure on me, and choosing wasn't really much of an issue. In other words, they didn't seem to carry as much weight as in previous Telltale games. However, as a whole package, the dialogue options did their part and helped make the game's story more immersive because I felt like my choices mattered. And speaking of the game's story, it's time to talk about that. Story is always a tricky thing to handle when reviewing a game. I want to share enough of the story that you get a picture of what to expect, but I also don't want to do an extensive literary analysis that spoils every major twist and turn. Hopefully, I can do a good job of finding a nice balance point by recapping the story, and then giving my thoughts on the characters and themes. If you want to skip this section, this little story recap, because of spoilers, here's the time you should skip to. Let me start by saying one thing I really did enjoy about this game, and I'm sure it's in the other Telltale sequels too, is that you can input the major choices you made in the first series into this game so that this experience feels more like a continuation of previous events. I really appreciated that, and it helped make this game feel a little bit more immersive. So the game opens up 1 year after the events of the previous series, in which Batman was able to defeat the likes of the Penguin, Two-Face, and Lady Arkham, and in the meantime, Gotham has been pretty safe. That is of course until the Riddler makes his grand return to Gotham, and Batman is presented with a new threat to the city. Over the course of the first episode, Bruce must use his influence as well as Batman's power to investigate the return of the Riddler and eventually take him down. Along the way, Bruce is introduced to new characters such as Amanda Waller, Tiffany Fox, and Imana Vesta, while also maintaining relationships with returning characters such as Lucius Fox, Jim Gordon, and Alfred. The game opens with Batman confronting the Riddler at a casino, but Riddler is able to escape. Afterwards, Jim Gordon and Batman analyze the scene to search for the secret to Riddler's plan, until they are interrupted by the introduction of Amanda Waller, who is in charge of the Agency, a governmental organization in charge of taking care of big city problems. Gordon and Waller don't get along, and already you can see that the game is setting you up to have to decide which one Bruce and Batman will side with. I'm not sure if it was this obvious because it's just that obvious, or because I had experience with other Telltale games that take a similar approach. Your experience with this will vary based on how much experience you have with this developer, but for me, it certainly did a bit to make my experience feel stale because I could already see where they were going with these two characters. Anyway, the first big plot twist occurs when Lucius Fox is killed by one of Riddler's homing missiles, and Bruce is forced to adjust without his technology guy and has to mourn the loss of a friend, all the while juggling the idea of bringing on Lucius's daughter Tiffany as the next tech expert. Meanwhile, Riddler must be stopped, and Bruce relies on a friend from the previous game, a guy named John Doe, who is obviously the Joker, just not quite at his most agitated state yet. Bruce uses the information provided by Joker to track down Riddler and eventually takes him down. Riddler is killed by an assassin to be named later, and the first episode ends with Waller revealing that Riddler was involved with a group of villains and that she knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne. I've skipped over some of the less important bits, but I'd say this first episode feels very distinct, as you get a good balance between playing as Bruce and playing as Batman, as well as a good introduction to the characters you'll be interacting with throughout the game and their different stances. I'd call this first episode one of the most memorable of the series. Unfortunately, the next 3 episodes felt like a blur, as when I think back to my time with them, all of them felt samey, and worst of all, unbalanced, in the sense that you spend way more time playing as Bruce Wayne than you do as Batman, and I consider that to be a negative. I'd say a majority of people don't play a Batman game to play as Bruce Wayne for most of it. In fact, in episode 4, you don't play as Batman once. That's insane to me. I'd say that one of the major letdowns of this game is the lack of balance between time playing as Bruce and time playing as Batman, although the story they wanted to tell does limit how Batman can be involved in certain ways. But anyway, back to the story. Episode 2 picks up with Waller manipulating Bruce and using the knowledge of his alter ego as leverage over him. She informs him that Riddler was a member of the Pact, a group of villains with unknown intentions for Gotham. The Pact includes Riddler, Harley Quinn, Bane, Mr. Freeze, and John, who, like I said, is Joker. And after getting beaten up badly by Bane as Batman, Bruce is told by Waller to go undercover and become a member of the Pact to learn what they're doing. Bruce complies with this request, and the next 3 episodes are about uncovering exactly what the Pact is trying to do in Gotham. Bruce is initiated into the Pact after helping Harley Quinn and John Doe acquire a device that can unlock almost any electric door in Gotham. Maybe it's just my own personal bias, but I always felt like it was completely insane for the villains to just accept Bruce Wayne, billionaire of Gotham, and complete opposite of them into their ranks. But whatever. So like I said, Bruce earns his way into the Pact and uses his charm and wit to manipulate all the members into trusting him, John Doe especially. Episode 2 ends with the Pact making moves to recover Riddler's body from the Agency, because his eyes are the key to a door that they need to open. The operation is a success, but Harley Quinn is left behind. The big twist of this episode is that Catwoman has returned and is somewhat a member of the Pact, as she is the one with the key to copying Riddler's eyes, which, like I said, they need that for opening a door later. So episode 2 ends with Catwoman coming back, and it's like, oh, there she is, Catwoman, yay. So episode 3 opens up with Catwoman and Bruce discussing the situation, and Bruce reveals that he is undercover. Harley returns to reveal she is alive and knows that there is a mole within the Pact, and that she is doing her best to discover who it is, and obviously it is of course Bruce. Bruce learns that the key to the Pact's plan is hidden on Riddler's recovered laptop, and Harley sends her, John, and Catwoman to go recover a decoder to access its files. Eventually, Bruce learns that the Pact is after a serum created by the agency that can create superpowered humans when consumed. And obviously, he has to put a stop to that. You can't have superpowered villains running around now, can ya? Remember, all the while, Bruce is building a relationship with these other characters, specifically with Amanda Waller and John Doe, as the other characters take a huge backseat to these two. At this point, it's clear that Gordon is being pushed out of the picture and that the player will have to choose between siding with Waller or John at some point. Episode 3 ends with Bruce getting access to the decoder and the laptop and discovering the location where a rogue group of the agency called Sanctus are continuing their work on making the serum. Episode 4 opens with Waller having Bruce manipulate the Pact into infiltrating the Sanctus headquarters in order to destroy and recover the virus they are working on. Bruce complies and succeeds in infiltrating Sanctus, where he eventually destroys the serum and is revealed to be the traitor to the Pact. Bane and company try to kill Bruce, but he is saved by John, who eventually escapes alongside Harley. Bruce realizes that Waller wants to keep the virus around to potentially weaponize it later, and he opposes her over it. Eventually, they realize that Harley has escaped with the last of the virus, and now she is threatening to blow up the Gotham Bridge if she isn't allowed to escape. Episode 4 ends with Joker talking Harley down, but is betrayed by Waller, who attempts to kill Joker. Bruce is forced to decide whether to aid Waller or Joker, which the game offers as one of its tough decisions, and my prediction earlier has now come full circle. You're forced to choose between these two characters. This ends a considerable stretch of the game that I personally didn't find to be too memorable. Everything seems to blend together as characters like Alfred, Gordon, and Tiffany seem to take a complete backseat as you spend almost all your time as Bruce Wayne with few Batman sections to break it up. I guess the best way of saying it is that the pacing of this game suffers during this part, this huge part, at least in my opinion. Finally, episode 5 opens with Bruce being an enemy of the agency, as he aided the escape of Joker. The rest of the Pact members are forced to work for Waller and the agency in the pursuit of our hero and Joker. They are now essentially the Suicide Squad, although they aren't ever called that in the game. Joker starts off the episode as Batman's sidekick, but after defeating some agency goons and Bane, Joker starts to really lose control and wants to kill Amanda Waller for trying to kill him. Batman naturally tries to calm Joker down and convince him that killing isn't the option to take, but it ends up being all for naught. Joker snaps again, and now the Clown Prince of Crime is truly born. Batman and Joker duke it out in a pretty epic fight that sees Joker defeated and Batman successful with the aid of new sidekick Tiffany Fox. With all the threats stopped, Amanda Waller leaves town, Tiffany joins the team officially, and the player is left with one last choice. Alfred tells Bruce he is leaving, unless Bruce gives up being Batman, and the player must choose to either give up being Batman or losing Alfred forever. Personally, I chose to give up Alfred because I believe Batman was too important to Gotham. This final choice was the only one that really felt like it carried any serious emotional weight. And that's the story for you. Okay, I tried to be brief, but yeah, it didn't quite happen. I got a little carried away, but let me briefly talk about some of the themes that I noticed in what I hope will be a bit of an analysis rather than a recap of the story. I'd say that this game has 3 major themes. 1, understanding the metaphorical mask we wear in public. 2, justice versus revenge. And 3, relationships versus the greater good. Bruce Wayne and Batman both have to deal with these issues, and so do many of the characters that they interact with, and I'd say that these themes are executed well overall because we see different approaches and perspectives for each of them. Let's start by looking at the first theme, understanding these metaphorical masks that we wear in public. This obviously relates most to Bruce/Batman because of the dual nature of his personality. Bruce has one goal, and that is to ensure the safety of Gotham by bringing criminals to justice, but he very much understands that he, as Bruce Wayne, is perceived by the public in a very different way, and because of this, he must choose what persona to don at different times, whether it's to handle the situation with the extreme influence of Bruce Wayne, or with the brute force of Batman. This theme is implemented into gameplay as well, in selections in which you have to choose to either go to the next area as Bruce Wayne, or as Batman. It shows the duality of his personality and how he must balance his public and private life. The same goes for other characters like Joker, who must deal with life differently after being released from Arkham. He struggles with the freedom offered and can't contain the pressures that he feels from society, which in turn drives him to people like the members of the Pact. Another theme is of course justice versus revenge, and it's another theme that is paralleled in both Batman and Joker. Batman has a very strict moral code that no criminal should be killed, but instead should be turned over to the authorities for a proper trial. This is his golden rule, one that he is unwilling to compromise on. Joker, on the other hand, defines justice alongside revenge, as he can't contain his anger towards Amanda Waller for trying to kill him. He believes that her death is the ultimate form of justice, and this is the reasoning for the final confrontation between these two legendary comic book characters. But they aren't the only ones who experience this theme. We see Alfred struggle with it as well, as he is left vengeful after witnessing the footage of Lucius Fox's death. Tiffany Fox too feels the same, as she kills the Riddler in an act of revenge/justice after he killed her father. The game is crawling with this theme, and Bruce's moral standard is challenged throughout the game. Finally, we have the theme of personal relationships versus the greater good. We see that in many instances, characters, especially Bruce Wayne himself, are forced to choose between protecting a relationship with an ally versus doing what is best for the greater good of Gotham. Here are some examples. Bruce puts Lucius's life in danger in order to decrypt Riddler's puzzle, and it ultimately gets Fox killed. Bruce's relationship with Alfred is hampered by his continuation of being Batman. Bruce's relationship with Catwoman is fractured when he must choose between loving her and using her to get to Riddler's secret plans. Bruce's relationship with John/Joker is based on manipulating him in order to get further into the Pact, and this ultimately leads to the destruction of their relationship. Sure, some of these interactions won't play out quite like this based on player choice, but I'm sure no matter what dialogue options you go with, you'll still see this theme quite clearly. I'd say all three of these themes were a big part of the story being told in The Enemy Within. They weren't the only ones, but I think they were the main ones, and I'd say the story does a great job at introducing them and executing them and showing them off from many different angles and perspectives. Overall, I'll say that the story was enjoyable, and I didn't have to accept too many crazy principles for the story to make sense. My problem with the story stems from two things. First, that the playtime between Bruce and Batman is way off kilter for most of the game. The whole first and fifth episodes see you as Batman for a vast majority of the time, while episodes 2, 3, and 4 are the opposite and you play as Bruce Wayne for almost all the time. Second, I felt like too many characters took a backseat to Bruce, John, and Waller. There were a lot of interesting characters in this game that I felt like didn't get quite enough screen time, especially Jim Gordon, who seemed to be completely out of the picture halfway through the story. For these reasons, I'd say that I didn't enjoy the sequel story as much as I did the original, but it was still pretty good. Well, that's probably the longest story section I'll ever do in a review, but we've finally arrived at the conclusion, so let's wrap this bad boy up. Batman: The Enemy Within is an enjoyable sequel to Telltale's original Batman series, but I would argue that it doesn't do enough to surpass the original. When it comes to gameplay, the developers started off on the right foot by introducing some continuations of existing mechanics, but as the game progressed, they either became normalized or disappeared completely, as was the case with the QTE options and the detective scenarios respectively. The story was serviceable, but certainly had its lulls and down points that interfered with the pacing of the game. However, a strong set of themes portrayed in multiple ways allowed the game to carry some real emotional weight on certain social, psychological, and moral issues. I'm working on creating a number-based scoring system, but it isn't ready yet. Because of that, I won't be giving an official number score out, but I will simply say that if you are considering this game, you ought to give it a try, especially if you played the first Batman Telltale series and enjoyed it. You should also consider playing it if you are a fan of Batman games overall and storytelling games. However, I would recommend that you play the original series first. With that being said, I think we're just about done here. So let me know in the comments below, have you played Batman the Enemy Within? What were your favorite and least favorite parts of the game? Do you agree with the statements I presented in this video or not? I'll answer all comments below, so let's see them. If you enjoy this style of video, or for some reason enjoy hearing my boring ass voice talk about games, then consider checking out some of my other stuff. If you're into reviews, I've most recently reviewed Kingdom Come Deliverance in a manner similar to this one. It's worth it to check out, I'd say. I also have a series called Psychology of Gaming, in which I connect the field of psychology with the medium that we all love, video games. So check that out too, if you feel so inclined. Anyway guys, that does it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing for more. And as always, have a nice day, and take care.